Yep.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to How Was a Race? This is Miguel Drew coming in again. And today we're going to have Peter on and we're going to talk about the Air Force Marathon. Today's featured beer is the Ton Oatmeal Stout from Warped Wing Brewery in Dayton, Ohio. It's an oatmeal stout coming in at a nice 7% ABV. It is nice, roti, coffee flavor, and has a nice flavor to it. The ABV they didn't provide that I could find, but I would put it personally around the 40 to 45 IBUs. 7% ABV, 45 IBU, and 3.5 medals out of 5 on the rating. Uh, Today's guest, Peter. Peter and I, we have ran together many times. Um, I believe we've ran, I'm going to try to get this right. We've ran Derby together. We've ran Air Force together. We've ran Monumental together. We've ran Fort Bend together. Go St. Louis, Chicago. I oh, and I saw you. I remember seeing you at the Canton Pro Football Hall of Fame marathon, half marathon, 5K relay, and we also ran Blue Ridge Mountain Marathon. Is there any I'm forgetting?
I was just gonna say Blue Ridge Marathon, but you said that. So, and I'm sure there's others because I feel like I see you at almost every race I run. But yeah, that's the ones you mentioned, I'm sure, and maybe a few more.
Probably a few more. Peter is a Hall of Famer. He's coming in. At a 100, I believe it's 160 half marathons. Is it?
Yeah, 160 halves and 35 fulls.
That's a very impressive number. A lot of miles under those feet. A lot of medals around that neck. A lot of finish lines. And lots of stories that we could tell. But today we're going to be talking about the Air Force Marathon. What made you? What? How did you first hear about the Air Force Marathon?
Well, it helps that I live about a mile away from it. So, it's the closest marathon to my house. Obviously, I walk to the start, I walk back home from the finish. I've done it every year since I believe 2009. Not necessarily the full marathon, but at least one of the distances. There was actually one year that I did the challenge before it even became a challenge, where you do like the 5K on Friday and the 10K early in the morning, on Saturday before the half and the full start. And so I, did all the distances throughout the years, not necessarily all of them in one year, but every year I would do, at least one distance. But I've done all of them. So I've done the 5K, I've done the 10K, I've done the half, I've done the full.
Awesome. Now, do you remember the registration process for? Because you've done this so many times. As I've done many races, a lot of them use either Run Sign Up or Haku, I believe it's pronounced. Do you remember the registration process for this race?
Don't quote me on it. I thought it was get me registered, but I could be wrong. Um, I just know what I can tell you. I believe they use Race Penguin for timing, I think. And again, that's just from memory. I don't have anything in front of me. And what I do remember, and I know I can tell you for sure, is that New Year's Day registration opens. And if you sign up New Year's Day, you're going to get that really good price, which I believe is somewhere around $65 for the half and like $80 for the full or something like that. And then obviously it goes up from there.
All right. Now, I don't want to. The order of the recordings and the order of the releases is not timed in any particular fashion at this point. It's all hodgepodge and having fun. But I believe this episode will come out before the 25 Air Force Marathon. So don't let
Gotcha.
that don't wait till next year to save that money. If you're branding at the chomping at the bit and you want to run it this year, go ahead, spend that money, get it happening. If not, 2026, let's plan ahead. Let's make that happen. Sign up on New Year's, get that deal.
Yeah, and I agree. Definitely, I'll be there this year. I'll also be there next year. Next year will also be the 30th annual for the race, if you like anniversary races. But it's always good to try a year, because I feel like the first year I run a race, I know everybody wants to try new races and do new things, but to me, the first time I run a race, I'm learning and I'm trying to figure out where everything is and what's the good stuff to see and what to do. And you're overwhelmed by all the new stuff. The second time I run a race, I already know that. I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta go do this, or I gotta make sure I check this out, and this is the place to be, and this is what I gotta do. And so, if you want to plan on the 30th annual Air Force Marathon next year in 2026, I would highly recommend, a preview year this year. Run the 29th annual, see what it's like, and then you kind of have a solid plan for next year.
Okay, that actually does sound like a good plan. It's something that's drivable, especially I mean, just population densities and centers. The Midwest, it's very drivable for a lot of people. There's plenty of hotels in the area, so yeah, that actually does sound like a good idea to 1 year race it maybe, and next year enjoy it. Uh, so yeah, that does sound like a great plan. So remember, after you register for the race, well, heck, you've done this race so many times, you probably do remember a lot of this stuff, and some of it you might just block out. From the registration process until the expo day, how are the emails? Are you annotated? Are there few and far between?
No,
How does that?
their communication is second to none. I mean, they do a great job. They actually have a lot of people don't know this, but they have staff that works year round, 40 hours a week, just like me and you at our jobs that are dedicated to this, right? So they're working all year, not just some people think, well, they just work September, during the race. No, like there's stuff that goes on all year round. They're planning for the race. They're working on, like you said, they're working on communication. They're working on finding sponsors. They're working. I mean, they're stuff all year round. So that's why you have communication going out. Every single month they have a newsletter. They tell you what they're doing each month, how they're preparing for the race. I just actually got recently the August one, which obviously we're getting really close. The race is next month. So they're talking about it and what's going on and how they're planning and any new stuff. If there's any, let's say, not that there is this year, but let's say there's construction somewhere and something's different. And, it's stuff that I read. I know some people might not or might skip the email, but I read everything because to me it's important. If there's any changes, let's say the expo is always at the Nutter Center, Wright State's Nutter Center. Let's say they're doing construction, something's going on, it's closed, they have to move the expo. That's not the case for this race, but that's happened to me at other races. It's always important to know why, where, when, how. But yeah, and then obviously when the expo does happen, you mentioned the expo next month. It is by far, I think, one of the best expos I've been to. It's massive. They have the top and bottom levels of the Wright State Nutter Center full of vendors and swag and free stuff. And, I think one year we got like Chick-fil-A sandwiches and just a whole bunch of really cool things. And they have all of, prior year shirts that they either sell really cheap or give away for free. And a lot of games you can play. I'll take my boys, I have two boys, 7 and 3. I'll take them with me. They'll play and do fun stuff. And yeah, it's a super fun expo. They'll tell you it's open for everybody. It's open to the public. You don't even have to be a race participant to go to the expo. But yeah, you'll just walk around and I would say it takes a solid hour, at least, even if you're just picking up your stuff and leaving. It's going to take you a while to walk all the way through, go down, get your stuff. And if you really want to hang out and see everything and get all the free stuff, I would say solid 2 hours.
I will have to admit, I've gotten lax on a few of my email reading this this past year. I kind of consider myself the pace ambassador for Derby Marathon, and I'll if a pacer's flying in or something, and hey, I need a ride, I got you. This year, the KDF Marathon, the Derby Marathon, it has been at the Louisville Center, which is a different location, and they're further out of town, about 10 miles or so from downtown, whereas the International is right downtown. And it went from 1 year to the next. It went from the Expo Center to the Expo Center. So I didn't read the email because I'm born and raised Louisville. I know exactly what Expo Center is. Well, it turns out this year they used a different entrance gate and entrance to the Expo Center. So here I am. Like, luckily I know the area and I can navigate and I know how to get around. But yes, those emails they contain a lot of information sometimes, and even when you are really familiar with a race, there's still some information that can be gleaned. So you say the expo is really large and really well done. It sounds really high quality. If I show up without shorts, we're not going to. Let's say I forgot my shorts. Let's say I lost my luggage or something happened. If you show up to the expo, would you be able to get most of your nutrition, your clothing, all those things met?
Well, first of all, hopefully, if you show up without shorts, hopefully you're wearing something. Uh, let's get that out of the way. Second of
Okay,
all,
okay,
if you show up
okay.
without shorts, yeah, in all seriousness, they have a whole bunch of vendors. Runners Plus is actually, in my opinion, one of the best places here in Dayton, and they have a place there that they sell all sorts of running shoes and clothes, and to your question, shorts and tank tops and hats, and yeah, I mean, you can show up honestly with next to nothing, and you'll be perfectly fine. You can get everything you need at the expo. Prices, I mean, if you've done races in California or New York or some of these really expensive places, I mean, prices here in Dayton, you're not getting you're not spending a ton. You can get stuff that's really cheap. And honestly, so I'll give you an example. I mentioned Runners Plus. They sell a really, really cool running hat. If you're a guy like me that I can't run unless I'm wearing a running hat. I feel like something's missing. They sell a really cool running hat that has planes on it, Air Force jets. So it's right. It's perfect for the theme. Um, and yeah, I mean, I can't tell you exactly how much, but it's like somewhere between, I don't know, $10 to $20, maybe 25 at most, but prices are very reasonable. Like, you can definitely, spend 50, $60 or whatever and get, shorts and a hat and maybe even a shirt. Like it's definitely, Dayton is a good place to come visit, run a marathon, buy some stuff that again matches the theme. You can have a shirt. I mean, you're getting a shirt from the race anyways, but if you, let's, like you said, want to buy shorts and a hat, maybe, you're probably spending $50 at most, and you got some really good quality stuff.
Okay, that is a nice little touch to be able to have something you can wear other than the race shirt itself. Which, don't get me wrong, I love my race shirts. Some of them don't fit like they should anymore, or some of them smell a little bit differently than they did out of the box. But I'm hesitant to get rid of them just because every time I see it, it just brings back a memory, uh, usually positive.
I
Sometimes a
my just ask my wife and she'll tell you. And I saw a meme that actually matches me perfectly and you also, and anybody that runs a lot, that says something along the lines of race shirts I own 400, race shirts I wear 3, race shirts I'm willing to get rid of 0. And I don't know if that's true for everybody listening, but it's definitely true for me.
yeah, it is. Yeah, those things they just I love them. Bring back such good memories.
Exactly.
So going in, you go to the expo. I've been there myself. I recall it being fairly easy. I did remember the first year I did it that there was or I'm sorry, the only year I did it, that there was a bin for recycling, not recycling shoes, but to donate shoes to send to um, developing countries. I believe it was.
Yep.
Do they do that every year, or was that a one off, or do you recall?
No, I'm pretty sure they do that every year. And in fact, even if for some reason they don't have them, at the expo this year, you can always go to Runners Plus and do that. So yeah, it should be there every year.
Okay, that I wasn't aware of that. That's pretty awesome. So I'm gonna have to bring some shoes to you over when we go to Monumental, and I'm gonna have to give you some shoes to take home to take the Runners Plus
Sounds good. And
for
if they're in good shape, then I might use them for myself. Just kidding.
but okay, so now this one, you spoke of the challenge. They have the Wright State 5K, and that's on the Friday right at the expo, is it not?
Yeah, it's right by the expo. The 5K is right at the Nutter Center, basically right by the entrance to the expo is where it starts, which is different than the half marathon and 10K the next day. Those happen right by the Air Force Museum, which is not necessarily super far away. It's like 2 or 3 miles, something like that. And in fact, they have a shuttle that, can take you from Wright State to the Air Force Museum that morning to try to help with traffic. But yeah, there are different locations just a few miles apart.
Awesome. So the 5K offers same day packet pickup. Does the half the Saturday events, the Saturday events offer same day packet pickup? Do you recall?
No, absolutely not. I mean, in fact, they start really early. I mean, the 10K starts at 6:30 a.m. and then the half and the full start at 7:30 a.m. So no, there's no way with the early start. You have to. So there's a lot of security, as you can imagine. With after the Boston bombing and with just everything going on. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. So secure. Everybody has to go through security. So it's one of those races that if your race starts at 6:30, if you're doing the 10K, or if your race starts at 7:30, if you're doing the half and the full, don't expect to roll in at 7:27 and say, okay, well, I'm just going to park, jump out of my car and start running. Like there's a process, right? I mean, you park, it's a little bit of a walk. There's, as you can imagine, it's a lot of people. You have, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think it's around 10,000 people that run this thing. So you're parking, there's that many people. You're trying to all funnel into where the start line is. And then again, like I mentioned, they have security, they have metal detectors, they have military personnel that are checking you and making sure that everybody there has a bib, they're actual runners. So yeah, just don't roll in 5 minutes before and expect to just start running. Otherwise, you're gonna miss your start. It is a chip start, so I guess it's not the end of the world. You'll have to pass a bunch of people if you're late to your start line. But yeah, you go through security. So that takes, I mean, a little bit. It's not like it's a super long line or anything, but again, it's just something that you would want to account for. So to give you an example, like I do most of the time, again, I'll do either the half or the full. Starts at 7:30. Like I would want to plan on getting there around 6:30. They do have a VIP parking option, um, which was actually really nice. They gave it to Pacers, I think, the last couple of years, which definitely helps. You can get there a little bit later. You're parking closer, so that helps. But if you're just coming in normal, parking with everybody else, I would say if you give yourself an hour. So starting at 7:30, you come in at 6:30. That should be plenty of time to get parked, walk, let's say half a mile or three-quarters of a mile or something like that, go through security and be ready to go.
Okay. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The the whole race is on base or no?
Yeah, good question. A good amount of the race, I think more than half of the race, and that's I think something that's probably the most unique thing about the Air Force Marathon is that you're running most of the race on an active military installation that normally you wouldn't be able to access. The reason I think that's really unique is, you can if it's I'm just going to compare to a race that doesn't exist. I'm not going to mention an actual race, but if you sign up for a race that's just, let's say, an out and back on the bike path, you can go run that out and back on the bike path by yourself anytime. You can almost run it during the race because it's just a normal bike path that anybody can use. So what's the big deal, right? Not saying, not to dismiss any other races, but that's what
Yeah.
makes the Air Force Marathon unique is that it runs on an active military installation. Most of the race does, not all of it, and I'll talk about that here in a second. That
Okay.
you can't normally just go in and say, I'm going to go run the Air Force Marathon course. You cannot. There's it's an active military installation. It's Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. You can't access it unless you're military. You work on base. There's gates. They check at the door at the gates. That you can't just go there and run it. So that's what's unique about it. You're running places that a normal person can't normally run. And when I said most of the race runs on the base, it's true. It starts by the Air Force Museum. You're running most of the race inside Wright Pat Air Force Base. You do exit the Air Force Base and run through actual streets. One of the coolest areas of the marathon, I believe, don't quote me on exact distances, but I believe it used to be around mile 9, and now I believe it's around mile 16 because they reversed the course for the marathon, but it's what they call the Fairborn Fly Zone. So you run through downtown Fairborn. Obviously, that's an area that anybody can run all the time. But what's cool about it is that you have a ton of spectators there. The only downside to running on base is because it's security and active military installation, there's not a ton of spectators throughout the entire race, but I think they do a good job of they have approved bands and stuff that they put there as course entertainment. Obviously, your aid stations, every aid station, so the people that give you your water and your Gatorade and all that, they have themes. So some of them are dressed as one thing, some of them are dressed as something else. You actually get to vote at the end for your favorite aid station. So they try to really make it really cool course entertainment. But if that's what you're looking for, then maybe the Air Force Marathon is not for you if all you want is course entertainment, because again, you're not running through a downtown area the entire race. It's not the Chicago Marathon or the New York Marathon or whatever. You are running on an active military installation, which again, the only downside is you don't have people and houses throughout all 26.2 miles. But it's a unique place that you normally can't run on your own. And it does go through actual cities and places and where people are, like the Fairborn Fly Zone that I mentioned, and a couple of others. So you will have spectators, you will have people cheering for you, you will have, of course, entertainment, you will have bands, just not every second of the race. So if that's what you really want, maybe think about it. But for me, I think it's good, because again, it makes it unique, and I enjoy it every year.
Okay. Now, when I ran it back in 19. I ran the half, and the one thing I did recall, and it was so I don't know the right word. I can't put the right word to it. However, we were probably around mile 2 or 3, and I remember we passed a fence line. We passed a gate that had the Department of Defense or whatever logo on it that was open for the race. So I knew we were crossing parts that people normally don't get to cross. And as we did so, there were there was hundreds, or there were thousands, but in our group there were a few hundred runners, and nobody was really talking or anything at the moment, and you just heard the feet of hundreds of runners just pat 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 pat, and it was, and the breathing was, a little bit labored. That day, it was the year that the thunderstorm rolled through, and the race start was delayed an hour for lightning on course, and it was just really different. But then you come out of the woods and you pop by a cheer zone, because they bust in cheer zones and aid stations, and all of a sudden you're right, the cheer zones and the aid stations are really well ran, really well organized, and you're quiet, and then all of a sudden you have that on course entertainment that you've been looking for. So it's a weird transition from one area to the other and back to, um, in a particular way, and it's unique. I didn't remember that. However, that was back in 19, and you mentioned the course has been reversed. So I'm sure, but like you said, being on military base, and also you go through the on base housing. Do you not, or does a full not do that?
I'm trying to think if you go, yeah, you go through some areas that have houses. Maybe we go through the main road and the side roads have some housing. So yes, I mean, the short answer is there's some areas you go through that are outside of the base. We go on a bike path, and outside of that bike path also, there's areas that are not on base. So it's not the entire course that's run on a military installation. However, like you said, the part that is, they really do their best to have good course entertainment, to have spectators. Again, it's not, necessarily every second, of the race. but I really think, the fact you got to look at the uniqueness of where you're at. You look at what's around you and like, man, I can't normally come here if it wasn't for this race. That's how I really enjoy it. You run, I really enjoy the Blue Mile, where you run that mile with, and I wish I could show you, but I even took a video the last time I ran the race with, U.S. flags on both sides. You have pictures of all those who served. It's again, it's a very unique race that it's different. If you're just looking for, hey, I just want a race that's lined up, like I did the Boston Marathon twice, right? With I was a guide or a support person for my friend who's an amputee blade runner, and really enjoyed the experience. And if that's what you're looking for, is rows of spectators from mile 0 to 26.2, then again, this may not be it, but the fact that you're on an Air Force base, running through places that you can't normally access, you finish under the wing of an Air Force jet. You're right at the Air Force Museum. It's free. You can access it. I think it's probably closed before the race, but after the race, you can go in the Air Force Museum. There's 4 buildings of planes if you're into that kind of stuff. Some of them you can walk through and see. Again, it's all free for visitors all the time. You never get charged. It's free parking, free admission. It's very unique. It's one of those things where you
Oh
can
yeah.
literally just come for one day, run the race, go to the Air Force Museum. It is the #1 attraction in Dayton, Ohio, and you would have had a great weekend right there. Even if you can't extend your vacation and you can just come for the race day and that's it, you just had a great trip.
Now, okay, we're gonna break that down. We're gonna there's some unique. Okay, well let's get one thing out of the way. There, you keep speaking of the uniqueness of the course and the fact you're on base, but I think there's one part of the race that is very unique, or at least I've only experienced at the Air Force Marathon. The Before the race starts, there's a flyover. I've done many races. I've never once had a flyover, an official flyover. The year I did it, I believe it was the in-flight refueler, the KC-135, possibly.
Yep.
And then one year they had the Osprey, which they had the Osprey, which is I believe just technically part of the Marines, but then they also had the jump team that came out of the Osprey. That Do you recall any of the other flyovers?
Yeah, I wish I could remember off top of my head exactly, which planes they were. I honestly don't. But I will say, I mean, you're right. That is another thing that is extremely unique, in that race. I mean, I think the only other times I've actually had flyovers were when it was just a coincidence and we had a plane, fly over us, by by accident before a race. But for it to actually happen on purpose, I don't think I've ever had that happen except at the Air Force Marathon. It's super loud. That's another thing I also got a video of right before the start. As you can tell, I like taking pictures. I like taking videos. So you will get a lot of that. Yeah, the flyover is definitely cool. I can tell you every year they have a unique plane or a unique fighter jet or something on the medal. So every year it changes, and I can't remember what this year is supposed to be, or but they'll announce. I believe they announce it at the race for the next year. So I think they'll announce like the 30th annual at this year's race. So another reason, if you come to this year's race, the 29th annual Air Force Marathon, you'll know what the 30th annual plane will be.
Okay, that'd be something to look forward to. And that, I mean, myself, uh, for those that remember in the Jim Thorpe Marathon review, in the middle of it, I was noticing Andy, his shirt, and trying to recall exactly what engine was on his shirt. I'm an aviation guy. I'm a steam locomotive guy. So those things just stick out in my head a little more than it does probably most people. Because yeah, that's just I'm weird like that. But hey, that's what makes everybody everybody. The course itself. Do you recall what nutrition is on course? Do they use Noon, Gatorade, Tailwind?
Let me think. So yeah, good question. I believe, and again, don't quote me about any of this because I run a lot of races. So trying to, remember that this race is this can be challenging, but I believe they use tailwind. I'm
Ooh,
fairly certain. Um, and yeah, they use Tailwind. They have a good amount of aid stations. I want to say it's at least every 2 miles. You know what they have that's really good, and I'm trying to remember how do you pronounce it? It's either is I think it's called Hoist. Have you heard of Hoist?
I have not. I don't think I've experienced hoist.
Yeah, they're a sponsor. Let me look it up just to make sure. Yeah, Hoist drink. Um, I'm just making sure that I'm looking at the right one. Or I remember because again, it's been almost a year since the last race, but I think it's called Hoist Hydration Drink. But it has a lot of flavors and it is really, really good. Yeah, Hoist, Hoist. They're a sponsor of the race. I will tell you that thing, you finish the marathon, you sweat. It's in September, so I don't know if you were going to ask about weather, but I'll mention weather. It can be hot. The good news is, if it is hot, you're used to the heat. By then, you're kind of at the end of the summer, so your body's acclimated to running in the heat. That's the good news. So unlike a spring race or a late spring race or an early summer race that can be hot and you're used to freezing cold temperatures. If you're like me, you're in Ohio and you've been running in 20s and maybe low 30s and your body's used to frigid cold and all of a sudden it's early April and it's 85 and sunny for your first marathon and you're like, whoa, I'm not used to this. And, you feel like you're gonna, explode because it's just so hot. For the Air Force Marathon, I mean, again, yeah, it's September, which it's that time of year where you just never know. It could be a really nice, cool day. We've had years that it was like 40 degrees at the start with a high 60. But we've also had years that unfortunately, was hot. And like you said, we've had, obviously passing storms. The start was delayed by a little bit that year. I remember that one too. So, just like any runner, you want to be ready for everything. But if it is hot, again, the good news, your body's used to the heat and this hoist drink that they have, I don't know, man, there's something about it. I can finish after sweating, I'm so thirsty. It just tastes amazing. It's kind of like that liquid IV. I don't know if you've heard of liquid IV, but man, it is just very refreshing. I can drink like two or three of them and just feel like I'm 100% again. And they have a ton of it. Again, it's a sponsor and they've had it for the last at least like 2 or 3 years, maybe. I actually just ran the Museum Mile, which is also put on by the Air Force Marathon
Oh,
team in June, and I can talk about that one if you want. Super fun race, obviously much smaller, a mile, smaller, shorter, all that. But they had hoist afterwards, and man, I love that stuff.
and that is having the right getting the right hydration afterwards. I know I celebrate some marathons in a different. I celebrate different marathons in different fashion, each one in its own unique way. But like when I did rock and roll half marathon in Cleveland, Ohio, they gave you a small. Well, your medal was uh, a guitar, and the whole day I went to. You also got a free entry to the Hall of Fame at the time. I don't know if they still do, but I walked around the Hall of Fame wearing my own little medal. So if you hydrate properly after the race and then wear your medal and walk around the Air Force Marathon, I think that will help you have a better experience at the marathon at the museum itself. So yeah, that hoist, I'll have to keep an eye out for that at different races. I have a few coming up. I'll keep an eye out for that and see if I can find it. The Okay, so we're going along. We have the flyover. We start the race. We go through the aid stations. The aid stations, tailwind nutrition. You come across, as you mentioned earlier, you, as you come across, you're coming down the finish line. You run towards the museum, and you go down, make a right, make a large right because you're running down a taxiway. If I recall, you're actually running down a taxiway at the airport at the museum, and there's different Air Force aircraft lined up. I think they had the C-17. I'm I'm gonna nerd out over the different aircraft, and I bet 10% of the few people listening are going to even care about exactly which aircraft. But there's probably about, what would you say, about a dozen, 2 dozen aircraft along the finish line that you run?
At least. And I wish I could name, yeah. If you're looking for me to tell you exactly what they are, you're talking to the wrong guy. That's why I would say run the race. And then you can, as you're running, you can entertain yourself by being like, oh, this one's this and this one's that. I'm not the guy to, tell you the exact names of all of them, but I can tell you, you're going to finish under the wing of, the biggest one there. You're going to get amazing pictures, and amazing finish line pictures there. And yeah, so like you said, you go down kind of that long stretch, you make a right, and then you make another right. So you almost kind of see the finish line, but it's not far from there. I mean, you're talking like, I think, a tenth or maybe 2/10 of a mile. You make a right, you go and, a tenth of a mile, and then you make a right, and then again another 2/10. So that whole area is probably like, about half a mile or so as you make those two rights straight into the finish line. That's where you have spectators on both sides. You can high five people as you're finishing. It is a super fun atmosphere. I mean, that to me is worth, whether you do the half or the full or even the 10K, that last half mile is worth, your entire race, because it's just, you know, as you're finishing, the announcers saying your name, you got the mascot, you got, again, it's just everybody, whether they know you or not, they're high-fiving you, they're cheering for you. You have Air Force guys putting your medal on your neck. I mean, you can take pictures with them. Again, it's you do it for the experience, right? You do it because it's a unique race that is, honestly, for me, different than any of the other 34 marathons that I've done, this being one of 35, and different than, as a half, different than any of the other 159 or whatever halves that I've done. It's unique.
Yeah, and that is the thing. When I'm a 50 stater, are you working on your 50 states intentionally, unintentionally? How's that? What's that process?
Unintentionally. Yeah, eventually it'll happen. I'm not really keeping track. Eventually it'll happen. I'll probably end up with Hawaii and Alaska left. But I'm not, yeah, I'm just, for now,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not really tracking it.
So as you go through with your 50 states, I mean, don't get me wrong. As you go through, there is a uniqueness to running in Washington as opposed to running in Mississippi or Florida or Pennsylvania. However, and they all have their unique things to see, whether it's Three Rivers Stadium in Pittsburgh, or you finish at the Art Museum in Philadelphia, or you're running and you 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 run Churchill Downs with Derby Marathon. Those all have unique features within the race, but as Peter is saying, the course itself, because you can go to Three River here, you can drive past it, walk up to it, whatever. But so much of the Air Force Marathon is not accessible to most people, and I'm not even sure if military members are allowed to be on all parts of that base at all times. I'm not sure. I'm not military. I'm not veteran, and I don't know how that base. But I will want to bring up the fact, and we mentioned this in other podcasts. We do not care about what time you finish. It's not if you finish in 2 hours and 30 minutes, you're a Hall of Famer. It's not if you finish at 6 hours, you're a rookie. It's the number of finishes, number of medals on your neck. We care about the accomplishment of the overall goal. However, with Air Force Marathon and MCM, and there's a few others, there is a strict cutoff with one of the gates. Do you recall? Do you recall roughly what pace you need to be to make that? Because we don't want somebody who is a 6.5 hour marathoner and say that this goal is a strict, I don't know, 6. I don't want to mislead somebody and have them enter a race that they might not be allowed to finish.
Yeah, good question. I don't have the number in front of me, but I can tell you the Air Force Marathon is one of those that has a very generous cutoff time. The reason I know that for sure, as of right now, which obviously could change, but as of right now, they have two kinds of pacers for the Air Force Marathon. They have, the runner pacers that go all the way up to, and again, don't quote me on this because it's always subject to change, but around a 2:30 half, and I believe that would be equivalent to a 5 hour full unless they do a different. Those are the all run pacers. And then slower than that, so 2:45 half, let's say, and slower, and then 5:30 full, let's say, and slower, are the Jeff Galloway method run walk pacers. And I believe, again, don't quote me, they have at least, actually, I know for a fact they have at least a 6:30 pacer, which I believe there's even a slower than a 6:30 full marathon pacer, so maybe like a 7 hour. Because I remember last year, I don't remember the exact number, the exact time, but I remember, even talking to the guy and saying, at least I'll finish, it won't be that hot, but man, while you're out there running for that long, I mean, so when you're thinking about it, 7 hours to be out there, that's a long time. So even if the race starts early, you're running until the afternoon, which means it's gonna get hot, even if it was nice and cool in the morning. So I remember talking to the guy, and I was like, man, that's just a long time. So again, I think at least 6:30, at least 6.5 hours, maybe even seven. But I've never heard, I'll be honest, running it for now. I think it's going to be about, gosh, 16 years. Oh, wow. Just to say it out loud. I'm like, man, I've been doing this thing for a long time. Yeah, I can't remember ever anyone saying, man, they swept me off the course or whatever. The only year I remember something like that happening, and it wasn't even cutoff related, it was when they black flagged the race because it got way too hot. It was just an unusually hot day, very unfortunate. The day before was nice and cool, and I think the day after the temperature dropped to like the 30s or 40s. It just happened to be the one hot day, and the race directors or race staff at the time made the decision to black flag the race, because they were just worried about people passing out and stuff on the course. I totally get it, for safety, and they decided to, like, hey, we're just gonna, at that time, we're gonna black flag the race, and it's just too hot, it's too dangerous, and they, I believe, then bust people off. So if, let's say, that you made it to mile 20, it's very unfortunate, but they basically, you had to get on a bus because they couldn't keep you, unlike another race where people might say, nope, I don't want to get on the bus, I want to stay. Well, you're in an active military installation, you can't just kind of stay on your own. So they bust people back. So that's the only year, and I can't remember which year that was, but that was the only year that I heard kind of some disappointment of, hey, I really wanted to finish, but I think they did a really good job of offering. I think, I wasn't one of them, but I heard they offered those people a way to come back, run the race again. I believe it was a comped entry. I don't quote me on it. And to get the chance to come back and finish the race the following year, and so on. So, other than that, on a normal year when it's not unusually hot, I don't think there's ever been an issue that I heard of someone, being picked up or not making the cutoff, because I believe it's a very generous cutoff.
Okay. That's, I remember I did, speaking of weather and everything else, I trained in Indiana and I flew down to run Publix Marathon in Atlanta, Georgia, which I was warned. I was warned, and I did not fully heed the warning. The Publix Marathon has 1,800 feet of elevation change, change or gain. I think it's gain for the full, and then so, but it's a lot of rolling hills, just 60 foot, 50 foot, 40 foot, 60 foot roll. There's just a bunch of rollers, and then I was training in Indiana, and it was around 25-degree highs, 30-degree highs. I was wearing thermals on my runs, hat, gloves, the whole nine. And I go down to Atlanta in February, and the day started in the mid 50s. And all I could remember was thinking, I'm in trouble. Because you're as you train and you get adapted to the heat, your body, I believe, can hold roughly about an extra pint or so of blood. Your body produces and retains an extra pint of blood as you have that acclimation for higher temperatures, because your body, that's your way of your body self-regulating the body temperature and hydration, because you need the platelets to carry water throughout your body. You need the blood to help cool the core of your body. And when you're training at 30-degree temperatures, your body's not producing that extra blood and platelets, of course. But you go from 30s to 50 plus, and then that race, it started in the 50s, but it was green flagged. However, when I was at mile 19 or so, they had switched it to yellow flags, and I was like, "Yep, that's confirmation. This race is not going to be my best." But
Right.
I did enjoy the race. It was. I will speak of that race later on. It'll be it's in the pipe works for that race. It's a wonderful race. However, it was not a time that I personally am exactly proud of. But I had a time, so hey, 26-2. So you finish the race, you have the race area, everything there is very well organized, very supportive, a lot of energy, just a lot of energy. You're a little unique in your proximity to where you live to the start finish line. How did you celebrate the race by going home and cutting the grass that day? How did
No,
you celebrate?
they changed this a little bit in the past few years. So they didn't used to have like a after party, and I'm making air quotes here, after party type celebration at where you finish, and they do now. So back in the day, years ago, so maybe when you ran it, I can't remember where 2019 fell, but back in the day, it used to be you finish and there wasn't a whole lot going on. You just kind of left, and the after party celebration was at the green. The green is like a outdoor shopping area, and that was at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They had parachuters that kind of came down, and everybody saw them. So it was different. It was like the after party was hours later in the afternoon at a different location. I believe they still do that. They still do. I could be wrong, but I think they still do stuff at the green. They still do the parachuters. But what's new and what's really cool, to answer your question, is now they do stuff at the finish line area, which is really cool. There's a lot of vendors. There's you can walk around and take pictures and do stuff, and there's like a photo booth type of thing. So no, to answer your question, when I finished the race, and I've walked to the start and walked back home. I biked to the start and biked back home. I even drove to the start and drove back home. It just depends on the year. Depends if I'm doing the half or the full, or what the weather's like, whatever. But no, I rarely any race will finish and just leave right away. I'll always enjoy, I mean, again, hoist drinks at the very least. You do get, I believe, at least one beer ticket, I think. And again, I run a lot of races, so don't quote me. I think it's like Michelob Ultra or something. But you get a beer ticket. I'm not going to go home with a beer ticket from any race ever. You can quote me on that. I'm going to at least drink drink the beer, take pictures. They have snacks. Obviously wait for some friends to finish, see how they did. But the atmosphere after the race is actually really cool. And plus, you're partying and you're hanging out right where the finish line is. So as you're doing all that and you're enjoying the drinks and snacks and all that, you're seeing all your friends and everybody finish right there by the Air Force Museum. If you're from out of town, you can go to the Air Force Museum and enjoy it. Even if you're local, and you're like me, you probably don't go unless you have visitors from out of town to go with. So you probably should go too. But yeah, and I think again, I don't remember, but I think they still also do the after party at the green. It's like at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they have parachuters, and families go, and same thing. They have
Okay.
vendors and giveaways and swag, and so that's kind of how everything wraps up for the
Okay.
weekend.
Now, unassociated to that particular race, two questions I always ask everybody on the pod is, what shoes do you run in?
When I race, like if I'm actually racing next year, I'm actually planning on maybe, racing being the 30th annual, maybe the full. I like Nike Alpha Flies. I feel like they're the BMW of shoes. You know, they're the fastest. So if I'm racing, I'm gonna wear Nike Alpha Flies. If I'm not racing, it depends. If I'm pacing fast and I really don't want any recovery time, I could still wear Alpha Flies or maybe Vapor Flies. They're like slightly less, you know, they're less bouncy. But I also, honestly, I like trying new things. I know some say that's good, some say that's bad. Like I just went to Runners Plus sale they had here, and I found Puma shoes that I never tried. I've never put on a Puma shoe before, and I was like, oh, you know what? That was comfortable and it feels really good. And so I'll try different shoes if I'm pacing, and let's say it's not a super aggressive pace that I'm pacing that I can, you know, afford to. Obviously, I probably won't try it for the first time. Then I'll go run like a fun training run, and then you know I'll try. Yeah, but I have Brooks that I wear. Again, I actually just ran in the Pumas and I really like them. Sauconys are always very comfortable. It just depends on how fast I'm going, what the weather is like, basically how much help from the shoe I want.
Okay. And what watch do you wear?
Right now, I have the Garmin Instinct Solar, which I really like because I guess it charges as you're running, so I never really have to charge it. I still do just because I'm paranoid that I'm gonna run out of battery, even though theoretically it like charges um, solar by the sun. So, you know, you never really need to charge it. And if you're like me and you run and do all this stuff all the time, it's kind of nice to not have to worry about ever running out of battery. The only, if I had to think of one issue with it, is I feel like it takes a really long time to find GPS. So where let's say you and I are doing a fun group run together with other people, everyone's like, all right, ready to go. I'm like, nope, hold on, searching for GPS. Hold on. Okay, now I'm ready. It just takes longer than everybody else. Oh well, I got used to it.
Okay. And that's the reason I asked those two questions is when I'm at expos and starting lines, a lot of people ask me what shoes do I run in, and um, sometimes a little, it seems a little more rude than I mean it to be, but it's the shoes that fit my feet. You run in Nike and you have a Vapor Flies and Alpha Fly,
Yep.
and I have only ran 3 miles in Nikes, and I have logged around 4 or 5 thousand miles, maybe running. I don't have the exact number, but in my 4 to 5 thousand miles of running, 3,500, 4,500 miles of running, I've ran three in Nikes, and they hurt my ankles because I need motion control shoes.
Hmm. Interesting.
So I run in Mizuno, Wave Horizons, uh, the Glycerin, Brooks Glycerin GTS, I think it is, Adrenaline GTS, the Asics Glycerin, I believe it is, wide. I tried out recently for a recent half and full. Actually, I did enjoy those. I think my feet might be in the border and might, especially for fulls, I might favor the wides to let my feet expand. So that's that. And then also with my watch, right now I'm in a Garmin 965, and I did have the Phoenix 6X, also a Garmin. And between the 6X and the 965, the 965 was newer. I still have not beaten my marathon time from the Phoenix 6X. So don't. I mean, if you want to try to go, excuse the purchase of a new watch by saying, well, it'll help me train and get faster. I mean, if you want to, excuse that, go right on ahead, buy a new watch. But a friend of mine, Jill Wallenberg, she runs with I think her Garmin she has to turn on to wear. It's not a all day wear, and she is faster than I am. And a friend of mine, when she started running, she ran 2 Boston marathons. She time qualified, and she would run and then drive the course to track her mileage. And she only had a stopwatch. She didn't have a Garmin or any other tracking device. So, you know, whatever shoes you need to wear, go to your local running store, find somebody knowledgeable to help you find the shoes that's for your feet. And whatever watch you want to wear, if you need to go and get an Armatron watch from Walmart for $20 to help you with the timing, once you know your mileage, I mean, just being honest with each other, I know Peter has ran a lot. Well, Peter's ran a lot of cities, but he runs. I'm sure he runs a trail or certain path normally, as do I, as do most people. You know where about 1 mile is. You know where 2 miles is. You know where 3 miles is on that course that you're going to run. You don't really have to have a tracking device to get started. Whatever shoes you can, are good shoes you can afford, get those. A timing device, just being honest, it's not going to make you faster automatically. But there are training, but better training is what makes you faster. Are there any closing words you'd like to leave before we um, finish up here? Any
No,
words of wisdom? Any advice?
I just want to thank you. I think this was great, and I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions, but I appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for your time. I look forward to, I want to see you in Monumental. Might end up having a thing there, a meetup if we have anybody interested. I'll be there either way. Uh, but so, but once again, thank you for joining us. And let me just remind everybody to run the race you're in, and forward is a pace.